Oh, snap. Another one? That's right. We said we were going to do all of them, and we're doing all of them. It's another episode of Talking with Andrew, that's me, Chris, that's him. Oh my god, I pointed the right direction the first try this time. And
We're
we're
getting there,
back.
man. We're becoming professionals.
True, it only took, 2 seasons and whatever, 50 something episodes, 60 something episodes to get there, but we're getting there.
Across 3.5 years, but who's counting?
Not us, obviously.
Not us, but actually, that's kind of funny because I feel like this whole year I've been counting by starting off and just harkening back to the promise we made our viewers of 56 episodes because there are 56 weeks in a year. And guys, this is 8 out of 8. Welcome back, like Andrew
I
said.
think it's 52 weeks, but 56 because that's how much we like them.
We're throwing in 4 extra weeks for you guys if that is the
Yeah.
case, just because we
Yeah.
love you so much. Honestly,
Listen,
math isn't our
2020
thing.
felt like it was really long, so 2021's only going to be 4 extra weeks long.
Yeah, 20. I don't even want to talk about 2020 because I think we have an amazing show for you guys today. I'm a huge fan of
True.
this guy's music. It's the complete opposite of 2020. Let's be honest. It's always super bright, uplifting, very positive, very
That's
very
true.
happy. So, guys, we are talking today. Let's not waste any time with Edward of Sunglasses Kid. Edward, welcome to the show, man.
Hello.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, dude. Where are
Nice.
you coming at us from this evening?
I'm coming at you from London, in the UK, from my apartment there in,
Nice,
in
man.
North London, if you know London at all. But yeah,
Cool.
so that's where I'm at.
I do
Is
not.
there-
All I know is that we
Is
had
there
a
a lot
guest
of
on our.
beef between North and South London?
Oh, I think that beef is in like meat. There's a
Oh,
lot
no,
of beef.
sorry.
There's a lot
Sorry.
of agricultural industry. No, I know the word beef. Sorry. There's a little bit of a sort of slight beef. There's like the River Thames, the famous river in London, that sort of is kind of north-south divide. And actually, the most of like what like the landmarks of London are north of the river, and there's kind of people south of the river. The transport system's a little. It's like harder to get in from the south. But yeah, definitely. Anyone if you talk to in the south will say the south's better, and anyone from the north says the north's better. The
Right.
north is better.
How Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I am north of the wall. Yeah.
It's funny. Before you joined our chat, I was making a terrible joke about Game of Thrones with Andrew, but that's kind of interesting, man. We don't normally kind of ask these types of questions, but I'm curious because pre-COVID, I think we had a guest or two from London. Actually, our friend Brian of Airways. I'm not sure if you heard of them. They're
Cool.
kind of like an English rock outfit. I think that's what they kind of go by on their social media pages, and I think that's cool. So I'll say it. And he was actually an American who moved to London, 5 years ago now, Andrew? Something like that?
Something like that, yeah, 5 or 6.
And so he developed this kind of like accent that is the mix between a Midwesterner who's lived in London for a long time but hasn't come home to visit often. But now we got the real deal. So I'm kind of curious, how's it been for you, 2020, COVID, and all that type of stuff? Was your life really that affected? Have you guys been safe? Like, what's it been like over there, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I mean, I actually work a day job, so I'm not like a musician full time all the time. So I was going into an office. I work in a sort of marketing writing role, and I was doing like at the best part of an hour commute because London is very busy in normal times, and so it's like being on the subway, in peak time. And so
Right.
the stress of not doing that, like you were like having this like war to get to work every morning, and you've been up for like 2 hours before you've even started your day, and then you're doing it on the way home, and I'm not doing as much drinking because the bars are closed and everything. So actually I found like I had more time available to me because luckily enough I was able to work from home and keep going during the lockdown. So I was able to, clock off at 5 and immediately start composing. So actually, 2020 was like an incredibly productive time for me, and more kind of opportunities have come out of that. And actually, to sort of help the company that I work for, I've only been working 4 days a week during that time. So in a way, it's been a sort of weird blessing for me. And I've been very lucky with things like getting food deliveries, which is one of the big challenges. There was a big disparity across the UK about who could get access to supermarkets were doing deliveries, but not everyone was able to get on those lists. So I've been very lucky, and I live in quite a nice bit of London, that I haven't been hit in the way that I know a lot of people have. It's been weird. It's been weird and depressing hearing about how parts of Europe have kind of doing all right, and how we're like the #1 death rate, I think, in the world, the UK. But I was very lucky as well. In September last year, I managed to do a quick flit over to Rome in Italy. I went on holiday with my girlfriend. Just in there, there's like a little window of like it had died down and then it all ramped back up. But yeah, it's been weird, but I think it has. I don't know how much. Some countries like Australia seem to be completely unaffected by it, and other places seem to be completely. But I think even depending on where you are in a country, like how well off or your like neighborhood is. You know, you can be in a country that's on paper the whole country is doing well, but you could be in an area that's been affected by, and you're seeing that across England. Even a country as small as England, you've got parts of England that are really badly affected and parts that are doing better. So it's yeah. So I haven't.
I feel like that's how New York is. Like the city is always saying that they're, you know, they've got a whole bunch of stuff, but we're not in the city, thankfully. So it's not as prevalent in our like small town area.
Yeah, yeah. I certainly, if I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't have bought an apartment in London, because I bought it not well, like maybe 2 years ago now. But I'm kind of like, if I could look at the crystal ball, I'd rather be like in somewhere out in the country, because I think actually, you know, what we didn't foresee was that the pandemic sort of fast tracked a lot of people's attitudes over things like home working, and it's changed a lot of people's mindsets, and especially, I think I've said this to other people before, that if you're thinking about rolling the dice or taking a risk or going, oh, maybe I need to, you know, push myself more to try and make music or whatever creative pursuit I have a kind of full-time gig, maybe this is the time to do it, when, you know, regular work isn't a guarantee. I mean, it's always been going that way. There used to be a job for life. Now it's like people are having to change work every, you know, couple of years. And now it's got to the point where you're just like, all bets are off. Do whatever you fucking can to make money, so,
Right.
Isn't it?
Right.
No,
That's why
totally,
like
man.
half of the people have OnlyFans now.
Yeah, although I've only sort of hearing, just really kind of got to grips with OnlyFans, which sounds mainly like it's just a lot of people doing lots of dodgy sex shit on it. Or maybe I'm.
Well, you know,
Yeah, it's not.
it's just kind of putting them all in one spot, really.
Yeah.
If anything, maybe it's doing a public service if there's one way to think about it. But
Yeah.
nah,
There you
man,
go.
I was just curious because, like, yeah, you know, we're in New York, and then New York State has different procedures than Florida, and then Arkansas, and it's a whole just thing. But I'm glad to hear you've been safe and you've at least been able to be productive, and sort of, it seems like you got something positive out of it. I mean, it's,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
I did. Yeah.
So why don't you take us back to sort of you as a musician? I've heard rumors that you're involved in the film world somehow. I've heard rumors that you're a film buff. I know that you love the 80s, but I don't really know too much about you and what kind of like called to you to be an artist in the first place. So one thing we normally like to do on this show at the start when we have a new guest who we're just sort of meeting for the first time is have them take us back, and I mean way back, to the start of you as a musician, as a filmmaker. I don't know. Tell us about yourself, man, because I've only heard little whisperings.
I don't know who's talking about the film stuff. I mean, I can going like, if I could start right. I don't know how way back you want to go, but I guess I
All the
grew up
way.
in quite okay. So I grew up in quite a musical house. My mum was a piano teacher and a classically trained pianist and a songwriter, and so I grew up with a grand piano under my bedroom. You know, as a child, hearing kids learn to play piano, but she never taught me, just because I think she knew I was a bit of a kind of difficult kid, I guess. But I grew up around music, and then she bought like a couple of synthesizers right in the early 90s. So she had a Korg M1 in the house, and I started kind of mucking about with that. And then I think when I was about 12 or 13, I can't remember why I decided I wanted to play the drums. I think maybe a kid at my school had a drum kit, and I decided I wanted to drum, and my parents caved in and bought me a drum kit.
Drums were so enticing as a kid. I don't know why. I was just as enticed.
I guess they're like the easiest thing to play, like straight out of out the
Yeah,
box.
that's
You
true,
can
because you don't need to
hit
learn
them.
about like notes and keys and all
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. It's just like hit this with your foot and hit this with your right hand, and you're good to go.
exactly. It's not. I don't think it's coincidence that when you're giving kids like, you're teaching really young kids music, you
Right.
start them with like percussion and maybe like percussive instruments like chime bars or things that you can
Exactly. Yeah,
hit
because
that don't require.
as a 9-year-old, I didn't care that I was the best violinist in the fourth grade. I didn't want to play the violin.
Well, yeah, and also I guess it's interesting because it's a kind of a weird thing that the piano even is not actually is considered a percussion instrument because you're striking it, and the difference between like a piano and say
Right, right.
a violin is that no skills required to get a perfect C note out of a piano. Anyone can do it. Whereas a violin is just, or a guitar or anything, is like you need some measure of skill to even make a note be in tune. So none of that appealed to me as like a lazy teenager who just
Hey, work smart, not hard.
yeah. And so I started drumming, and then I was messing about on the piano, and this was in, I guess, the mid to late 90s, and electronic music was, well, it was already booming in the UK. It had been for some time, but I was getting more and more interested in like electronic music, and like I say, I had these synthesizers in the house, and my dad, who just he'd retired early, and he decided to, for some reason, I can't remember why, he decided to take up audio recording as like a kind of hobby. So I suddenly had all this gear in the house as well, I'm looking about. So I had all these things, and I was involved in acting and theatre. So I came from this kind of performing artsy kind of musical sort of family. And the film connection that you've picked up on was only really that again, I didn't really know what I was doing, wanted to do, and ended up going to film school. I say film school. It was a university that did. It was a university that was quite highly thought of that did film, and it was 16 mils. So we were physically loading like Arri SR cameras, doing film shoots. We were dollies and grips and everything, and doing the proper full works. And I think at that point, I thought I wanted to be a film director. And I guess the person who like the thing that happened there at uni, which was around, I guess, the year 2000, was there was a guy called Ingmar, who was this 6-foot Norwegian student there on the course. He was a really amazing director, long blonde hair, who scored his own movies. And he was doing it all on a Korg Triton and had a computer, and I was like absolutely in awe of what he was doing. And he was like, Edward, I can give you this CD with some software, and you can try and do it yourself. And on it was like cracked copies of like a bunch of stuff, and the only thing I could get to make a sound was Fruity Loops, which it was then known as, now FL Studio. And I started making like beats on like I don't know what version of Windows I was on my computer I was using to write dissertations on. I was on that, and I started making like sort of sampling and breakbeat and things like that, and messing about, and then I got more and more into the idea of sound design and music with film, and wanted to do that for I tried to do that for a while, and incredibly hard, completely untrained, totally self-taught, and I just I was a complete failure at it. And I mean, I was actually quite good at composing, but I didn't have there also weren't half the things that there are now. That wasn't, you go back to like 2003, YouTube didn't exist, there was nothing. And then I just got to the point where I was in a place where I was just like, this isn't going to work. I'm one of the deluded people who thinks they're going to be a film composer, and I'm going to spend so long doing this that I'm going to become an unemployable person who's going to look back and go, I'm going to have wasted my life. So I caved in and got a regular job and worked in digital marketing, social media, and things like that. And then I was out of work in like 2012 or 13. And I was just making music. I kept making music, different styles. And I was just flirting around with the style of sort of 80s pop and things like that. And around the same time, the movie Drive came out, which every synthwave artist, will point to as a kind of moment where they all went, oh, that's, I'd like to do something like that. And I think for a while, like I sort of flirted around with different styles, and I just literally started making just just anything and just chucking it out. I was making like a song a day and putting it on SoundCloud. And literally the artist name that I have was literally, I had Korg Wave Station VST open, and one of the presets that happened to be on the screen was called Sunglasses Kid. It's like the name of an electric piano on the Korg Wave Station. And I was just like, well, I need a name to give myself on SoundCloud because I don't want to use my actual name. But I had no like game plan. I wasn't trying to make anything out of it. I just was sort of more, I used to be on MySpace when I was doing my film composing stuff, and I guess I was looking to sort of network, and MySpace had slightly died, and I thought, oh, this is an interesting place to meet other musicians. It wasn't, I'm going to become an artist and sell music, and none of that was it was really just a kind of just to kind of do something. And it just sort of happened from there a bit. And I just sort of was one of the kind of earlier people to be doing it. So there was a bit of a luck of kind of being there first more than anything else. But although I wasn't doing the sound that a lot of that's become the kind of I guess the mainstream synthwave, looking like a really sub genre, but like the, you know what I mean by the kind of more popular sound. I'm clearly not doing that. I'm done much more in this kind of pop sort of world. But
Yeah,
Totally, you got that
I
80s
feel
workout
like
vibe.
exactly. I was gonna say like listening, like we've had other synthwave artists on the show that kind of like they have the 80s sounds, but it doesn't feel like they're from the 80s. It feels like they're using the sounds to do like modern-y kind of things, but it almost feels like listening to your albums is like finding an undiscovered artist from the 80s. That it's just like, how does nobody know about this person? Like, this is crazy that he's gone this long without being discovered, but it's because it's from only a couple years ago.
well, yeah, I mean, I've kind of part of my, I guess some of it is was still about my lack of like production knowledge or skills, and I was just kind of, and I was also doing it for fun, so I was kind of like I said, because I got so kind of depressed and stressed out about the film composing stuff, where I had been trying very hard to write really sophisticated music, and I was doing it to an extent, but when the synthwave sounds first started evolving, there was people doing this kind of like funky disco-y poppy sound, and then there were people doing this more serious stuff that's become kind of like dark wave or this very soundtracky music. And for a moment I thought, oh, maybe I should be doing a bit of this, although there weren't actually that many artists doing it when I started doing it. But as that started becoming more of a popular sound, I started thinking, oh, maybe I should pivot into doing something. Now I've got a little bit of a listenership, maybe I should try and take this more seriously and do something that actually is a bit more commercial. But it's then started to feel like I was getting back into the same headspace as before, which is this kind of like serious composer. And I just had kind of had enough of that. And so I guess what I'm doing is, when you hear anything I've written, there's actually very little like going on that's technically clever. I'm not doing lots of special effects. I'm not doing lots of clever things that you'd need to be a kind of real wizard in a studio to understand and do. I'm using the kind of standard reverbs and EQs and compressors. I'm not doing anything particularly clever there. I guess most of it's in the composition. We lost Andrew. Oh, he's back. There he is. So I decided to sort of focus on the composing, try and kind of do the best I can. So I guess it sounds 80s also. I guess I did sort of start to kind of I almost created a bit of a rule book for myself, which was kind of, if you couldn't do it in the 80s, you can't do it. That's kind of my rule. So anything that like takes you out, anything that just sound like I can use something now that like I'm doing stuff that they couldn't do in the 80s by the fact that I'm running a multi-million-pound studio inside a laptop, right? Like this would be a Fairlight was like £100,000 synthesizer that the average person didn't have access to. But I'm like all these kind of glitch effects and clever sounds that just weren't being used in the 80s. So it's like, no, that makes it instantly sound contemporary. And when I'm like going through sounds and sort of auditioning ideas and things like that, I'm like, well, no one used that chord progression. They weren't doing it like that. No, they weren't using that sound. That sound sounds too 90s. That's getting a bit too trancey. So I spend a lot of time kind of going auditioning sounds, kind of going no, yeah, no, that's 80s, but like 70s, 80s, that sounds a little bit disco-y. That sounds a little bit too like 90s.
Right.
So it's that's how I kind of found the sound a bit, and I'm borrowing ideas from lots of different
Right.
musicians that I listen
Right.
to.
I was listening to it with my girlfriend, and she was like, "This sounds like some Paul Abdul, Janet Jackson type of stuff." And then I looked through the influences one, and I was like, the third, fifth, and sixth song are Paul Abdul and Janet Jackson. I was just like, there it is.
That's it. I mean, that Paul Abdul was the first album I ever bought. It's
Wow,
random.
that's
When I was
awesome.
about
That's really
I was
cool.
about 8 or something on tape, and my sister, I think she had Rhythm Nation by Janet Jackson, and I think I did grow up listening to that kind of R&B influenced pop as a child, and I was only thinking about this the other day. I was thinking I almost wanted to tweet about it, but I was like, it's such an esoteric thought that I'll keep it to myself. But I was sometimes I'll listen to a pop song now, like an 80s pop song that I knew quite well as a kid, and then you don't listen to it for years. But I remember when I'd listened to those songs as a child and having no understanding of how they've made the sounds. And then as now, like having spent so long producing, I go back and go, oh, it's an 808 cowbell, and it's the DX7 or some sort of electric piano, and oh, that's a so-and-so. And I now know what those things are. But at the time, they were just these exciting, magical like sounds. Where you're like, what is that sound? Like, I always remember the 808 cowbell really standing out to me. Like New Kids on the Block was the other album, like my second album I think I ever bought. It was like Hanging Tough and like Paul Abdul's first album, whatever. Both have got the 808 cowbell throughout it, and I don't know, just a cool sound. There's just lots
Yeah,
of cool sounds in 80s music.
totally, man. No, I'm kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to me at least, based off of what you've been saying, it seems like I'm picking up on a filmmaker's thought process where, you know, a lot of filmmakers love to pay homage to the greats that came before them. For example, just look at like Filoni in this new Mandalorian series, paying tribute to all those Kurosawa films that inspired him when he was first coming up and getting intrigued with filmmaking. I mean, there's quite literally a shot for shot remake in that episode where we first meet Ahsoka Tano in The Mandalorian to a Kurosawa film. And not often do I hear, and maybe I should hear, musicians who are in the synthwave genre that's so heavily paying tribute to a decade, to a time, a specific, very special, in my opinion, type of music homage coming up a lot. So do you find, even though that maybe this whole composing for film and TV thing didn't quite work out the way you wanted, that thought process maybe never left? Because I gotta say, you're the first person to come on this show and think like that.
Uh, totally. I mean, ironically now, I'm actually working on some not film scoring, but some scoring to picture stuff for a commercial. So actually, some stuff for somebody who is in your neck of the woods. And that's the irony of it, was the kind of work I wanted to be doing, which I desperately wanted to sort of come to me in this magical way when I was 20, by just sitting around on MySpace, and has ironically come to me through this journey of Sunglasses Kid, where I kind of almost let go of this trying hard to be this serious composer, and then somehow it came full circle. And actually, when I was trying to write film music, I was trying to run before I could walk. I was trying to write the big orchestral music when I hadn't really got down the fundamentals of writing a 3-chord song. And so actually, Sunglasses Kid actually kind of put me through a bit of a boot camp of like actually how to write a song, and then you can almost work your way back to writing orchestral music or film scoring music, and take those sort of broad principles and map them into a kind of different palette of sounds. But the film approach, I guess, yeah, I guess there's two things that I suppose I keep my filmmaker hat on for. One is, yeah, obviously the influences, and I mean, I don't think that's a particularly like filmic thing, that taking influences, people do that all the time in music. But I guess I think of like the storytelling side of things. I quite often will use, if I'm talking to other musicians about advice on songwriting, I'll quite often find myself drawing on like a film analogy or a storytelling analogy of saying, like people are too, producers, musicians are too quick to rush to the kind of fun decoration and stuff before they've got the kind of main plot like plotted out. I'm like, your chord structure is your plot. get that sorted before you start worrying about like the names of your characters, or before you start worrying about the detail or the title of the movie. That's kind of the fun stuff, sort of, as you've got it fleshed out. The hard thing is like, what is actually happening in this? What is the story of this song? So I think of songs. I think it's a good way to think of like writing a good song is because you're telling a story. Okay, you've got a great intro, how many great movies? You got an amazing opening scene, and then it doesn't really go anywhere. There's nothing more frustrating than that, and it's the same with the song. There's nothing worse than this amazing opening, really well done. You're like, holy fuck, this song's great, and then a minute in, you're going, it's not doing anything different now. It had its one trick and it did it all right in the start. And so I try to kind of keep that kind of storytelling hat on, I suppose, a bit. Yeah.
A movie for me that comes to mind when you describe a movie like that is Chronicles of Riddick.
I can't. I'm trying to think if I've seen
movie, that movie.
It's Vin Diesel.
Wait,
yeah, no, I know.
No,
I'm
hold on. No,
which one I've seen.
No, hold on. I'm thinking of the wrong one. It was a different Vin Diesel one. It was like Babylon A something.
A Babylon AD. I still haven't seen that.
That was
either,
the one.
But...
That one
Oh, I didn't see
starts
that one.
off, you're like, wow, so cool, sci-fi stuff. And then like 30 minutes in, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. And then 45 minutes later, you're even more confused. So I'm just like, I think 3 different people wrote this movie and they didn't read the other parts of the movie.
I think it's like definitely like, whether it's a song or a film or a story or a comedy routine or anything creative, coming up with that initial premise, that really great initial premise, is actually sometimes not actually the hardest part. It's the kind of like, and what next? Okay, you've got the beginnings of something really good. You can come up with a great hook or a great idea and go, shit, I might be on something. But it's like, can you finish it and not waste it as well? There's nothing worse than having a great idea that then didn't quite land, or that felt like, and especially if you're building up that expectation in the listener, like psychologically, they're going, oh, I didn't really, I wanted it to do something more, and it kept like hinting it was going to do more, and it didn't. So I always kind of try and think of what the listener's psychologically going through as they're listening to a track. Like, I'm like, well, what they're going to expect to change up here. Then they're going to be getting bored by about this bar. So I need to now do something else. If I don't, this is the moment they're going to go,
Right.
So I always try to keep, approach it like a non-stop kind of, a non-stop action movie.
Right.
But an 80s pop song.
Yeah, I can relate to that with trying to come up with a Dungeons and Dragons campaign.
Okay.
Like the first idea, I'm like, yeah, cool, you storm a castle or something. That's easy. And then it's like, well, cool. What if they go in the castle and want to go left instead of right? And I'm like, shit.
Right.
Then you're derailing my whole idea. But
that's why you have the ceiling collapse in, and maybe someone takes a little damage, and then they have to go to the right. But I know what you're trying to say, Andrew. I'm just sort of hitting around. But
I love coming up with ideas for movies. I still do come up with ideas for movies all the time. But I'm like, there's one thing coming up with an idea where you're like, okay, what about a movie where like memories can be like stolen and implanted into other people? Maybe it's like an espionage, like spy agency that implant memories and steal memories. That's a fucking great idea.
And you're like, dude, that's so cool.
Yeah. What's the plot? What's the actual story though? I don't know. That's it.
There's a guy stealing memories.
There's a lot of distance between that great idea and coming up with that final product. And you take like a Philip K. Dick, novel or film or whatever, you can see the difference between someone executing a good idea badly and a good idea well, and it's night and day. So
then there's the separate issue. You're working on an idea, you get psyched on it, you start working on it, and then halfway through you're like, you know what, this idea might be better if we do it a different way. Let me start over, start doing it the other way, and then you start doing it like that, and you're like, you know what, the other way might have been better.
Yeah.
And you just keep going back and forth.
Yeah. or sometimes with this music, you can, if you're reliant on technology, which most of us are, you can have some absolute fail and you've lost the whole project. That's happened to me before. And then it's amazing
That's
how
happened to us.
You can revive the entire thing from your memory much quicker than you think. You go, oh fuck, I'm never going to be able to remember what the hell I just did. and then somehow you magically do, and in fact you sometimes do it even better, because you realize when you actually are like sitting down composing, the amount of time that's actually being spent doing the actual composition isn't as much as you think. The majority of the time is you not knowing what you're doing and trying to think of it. So you're spending, you know, ages noodling around with ideas. But if you know exactly what you're doing, to recreate it when you know where you're going, you can. In fact, I did that for the song on my latest album called Never Ending Dream. I got really sort of lost in with the mix, and I decided a lot of the sounds were the wrong sounds. So in the end, and this was literally mid mixing it with the guy who I was paying to mix it. I was like, dude, this is just not sounding right. And I just recomposed the entire thing from memory in about 4 hours. So I just started again, going, right, let's just start again with this whole fucking thing with different sounds, I think the drums are a problem. I think this main synth is causing the issue. And I'm just going to start again, clean slate. I've got the vocal. I remember roughly what the chords are. I'm going to recompose the whole thing and do it again, because it just, and you know, the whole thing took me, I'd say 4 hours or something, because I knew what I was doing. I wasn't having to think of it for the first time. Yeah.
No, that's so true. I mean, Andrew and I, you know, we've had a band. It didn't quite work out. We got in over our heads a little bit, signed a contract. We didn't do the whole, you know, invest in yourself. We were always relying on someone else for another part of the process. But then in demoing one song, which I guess we could still use, we're kind of, you know, working on a new project as we speak, and just keeping the podcast going to stoke our creative fire in the meantime. But I got this laptop, and because I wanted to upgrade my computer, and it was a secondhand laptop, and I knew I should have bought new. Andrew noticed this dent in the bottom of it, which was a huge opening that I just didn't notice because I was so blinded by like going from a 2012 MacBook to like you know, a 2019. I was like, oh my god, I can have more than 4 tracks in a Logic session. This is amazing. You know what I mean? And so I didn't properly transfer over my files, and we lost a song that we both really believed in.
Yeah.
But like you said, when we went and rebuilt the track, it's better than it was the first time.
Right. But I don't know if I can remember a feeling so defeating as when you open a track that you're like, yo, this song is so good, and then there's just like nothing there, and you're like, wait, we worked on this for 8 hours yesterday, and now there's just the one guitar part that just goes
yeah.
I think the worst thing is if you're I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm self-taught, and I don't even know what chords I'm playing. I don't know what key I'm in. I don't know what I'm doing. So
I just look at Chris and he tells me what to play.
Right. So like if I think I've sometimes like I'll start from this really like strong, simple idea that's super easy to remember. And sometimes it'll be a little bit more complicated. And there'll be moments where, particularly if you have a happy accident, like you literally hit the wrong chord, but something you go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, yeah. And you're going, fuck, record this. And if I take my hands off the keyboard, I'm going to literally forget what I'm playing right now. So I'll do something, go, and afterwards you're going, oh my God, if I tried doing this tomorrow, I never would have done this. This was this fluke lightning in a bottle that you learn to quickly like kind of spot the moment and try and capture it. And it's losing that kind of stuff that you go, oh my God, if I lost that, which I've done last, you go, I literally cannot remember what I was doing. And if you were like a classically trained or really great, you know, you knew all the theory and everything, in the moment you could be going, well, of course I'm modulating from a C major into a D minor, and then I'm augmenting the seventh and la la la. And so you could kind of, you've got this roadmap to kind of knowing what you're doing. Whereas for me, it's this kind of intuitive flying blind. And then it's all in my memory. It's all kind of, I'm just literally visualizing shapes on keys. There's no reference point, so it's a bit of a scary.
Right.
This is a bit scary sometimes. Where you
I feel like Chris and
100%.
I kind of have like both sides of that spectrum. Like I'm the one that's like, wait, but then it needs to just do this thing where it's like woo woo woo, and Chris is like, okay, so like he plays something, he's like, so like something like this, which then should go into this part that goes, and I'm like, maybe, but it just has to feel like this.
But that's
Yeah,
not
and
even. But that's not even like I do have some musical training. Just because I don't know, my parents were very. They wanted me. They didn't understand music, so if they knew I wanted to do something, they were always going to be supportive of it. But they were like, get lessons though. And I remember breaking my guitar teacher's heart when I started playing punk rock and stopped, working on my pentatonic or my blues scales. And then all that knowledge I had built up as a younger kid kind of went out the window when you're just playing power chords and trying to sound like Green Day or something. You don't really need much punk rock to go from, the G to the C to the D, then back to the G. Not much musical knowledge, that is. And so I do regret sort of not sticking with, because I have lost a lot of sessions and a lot of songs and not been able to figure out or achieve in my younger years in some projects something I wanted to go for because I hadn't paid attention to that side of things. But I
yeah,
also think there is something to muscling it out and letting your ear really guide the process. I have some friends who are great composers, great songwriters, doing really cool things with their music, but they're just so by the book. And sometimes
mm,
it's a little too processed and a little non-human, and I think you can run into that issue a lot with electronic music. And that
mm,
kind of makes me want to segue into like you as an artist, because
mm,
I think one of the things that you do differently that a lot of synthwave artists, I'd say, try to do but not necessarily achieve, because as much as I love the genre, I think is a clone for every amazing artist. There's like 90 clones of that artist. It just happens whenever a genre blows up, and this
mm.
seems to be what's happening to synthwave right now. But you have a human element, like your album. Let's start with Graduation, right? It's I see that filmic side to you. It has that narrative, Principal Dickland, which is hilarious, by the way. And there's like the whole kids sort of like, it's Graduation, and I feel that like 80s summer vibe. But instead of having them be instrumental tracks and having them weigh heavily on synthesizers and sounds that aren't really human, you have a lot of guitar, you have a lot of piano, and there's usually a vocal on the track. So like
Mm.
I'm curious, like your process there, and if you think the muscling it out thing has kind of lent itself to happy accidents.
I mean, I guess, oh God, I think like I was doing a lot of the instrumentals right at the start. I was doing like winding back to when I was talking about the kind of early days of just chucking things on SoundCloud. I was doing instrumentals because I had no ambition to do anything with any of this. And then as I started kind of getting more people listening and paying attention, I decided I would just put in my bio I was looking for anyone who's interested in singing, because I just thought it'd be interesting to try and write an actual pop song. The more I started kind of, I guess because I was writing in this kind of style that sounded more like, what am I trying to say here? A lot of the synthwave is very soundtracky and lends itself to being instrumental in the kind of the sort of palette of sounds they're using and the compositional structures. What I was doing was using sounds and kind of referencing a genre that was only really known to have vocals attached to it. So I'm writing stuff in the sound that sounds like Janet Jackson or sounds like Paul Abdul or whatever. And then I was getting people going, this totally needs vocals. And I was like, I'm also structuring it in this kind of verse chorus way. So it started to feel like this missing element rather than, so like I said, I was almost approaching them like songs in their structure. So that was what started making me think, maybe I should start reaching out to music singers and vocalists and seeing if anyone's interested. And then the guitar thing was that I always loved the guitar, and I love writing kind of like funky pop and fabricating like funky electric guitars. Super hard to do. So I started to kind of network with people. I started finding people who could play guitar, and I thought, well, this is the one thing that I can't do, and also it adds it sort of elevates the song and makes it feel more like a real song rather than it being 100% fake sounds. And so I guess and no one else was doing it either. There was I say no one else was doing it, but less people were doing collaborations in the way they are now. Less songs were having vocals on it back then. So I felt like, again, oh, maybe I'm doing this. Is when I was starting to think a little bit strategically. I was like, oh, maybe there is something in what I'm doing. Maybe I should take this a bit more seriously now. People are kind of asking me or suggesting to doing it, and singers were DMing me saying, hey, I'd love to sing over that thing. And there's one particular guy, this R&B singer out of Miami who was the first person to sort of DM me go, I really love what you're doing. And I was like, really? He's like, let me sing over it. I was like, I mean, okay, yeah, all right. And I sent him this thing, and he came back and he transformed it, and I was like, oh my god, this sounds like an actual song. I was like, dude, that's amazing what you've done. I couldn't even imagine, it becoming this thing that you've transformed it into. And I think that was the moment where I was like, adding that top line vocal, adding guitars or anything can like transform something. And I just found it kind of, it was almost like alchemy or something. It was always like this amazing moment where, as I saw the kind of, again, going back to the film, is again growing up, starting from this kind of working in a creative art form that is about collaboration, and that no one person can achieve it. It's your sort of, it's everyone coming together. So, oh God, I've completely just waffled here. This hasn't made any sense what I just said. But,
No,
I think
I'm
that's where
following
it's. I think the human stuff has come out of, I guess, my kind of constantly collaborating with people and not being precious about it, being happy to kind of then let go of the song and let other people start to kind of affect it and do their add their kind of voice to it as well. And I think that's the best way to collaborate with singers. I was saying something the other day in a chat with someone that the worst thing, I think, not the worst thing, but I think it can be a danger to get too prescriptive with musicians or singers, to start telling them the exact notes they need to sing, the exact thing they need to do. Because then it's, you're not letting them add their kind of voice, and you're starting to kind of, and then you end up with the same melodies as well. I love just giving it over to someone like Myrone, and you're like, or Tim Capello, and you're like, I know what they're going to do. They've got the broad note of do something cool here, here, and here. This is the general vibe. And then it's kind of like opening a Christmas film. You're like, what the fuck's it going to be? Like, sometimes you're like, oh, okay. And sometimes you're like, oh my God, now this sounds massive. This sounds so cool. So I really love that. So yeah, but you can't be a control freak if you're going to do that. Otherwise, you'll just get stressed out.
Absolutely.
Totally, man. In that process, do you so you're letting them go off and create and do their own thing and put their stamp on something that you kind of built from the ground up. But do you sometimes feel that maybe it's not the right vibe, and do you ask them to do like a second, third, fourth take?
Like right when I first started doing it, I was having a lot of I'd have somewhere, particularly with vocalists, where it just didn't work out. They just weren't hitting it. And I would be like, yeah, this isn't quite working out. And sometimes it meant shelving the entire song. I just decided, I kind of almost was too embarrassed to say that this isn't working out. So I was like, yeah, just let the song sort of drift, and then nothing would happen with it. And so I learned like the kind of one of the big things is picking the right person in the first place, and kind of knowing that they can deliver and sometimes you can take a risk and get lucky, and sometimes taking a risk is actually it's not a good thing to do. So over the years, I guess I've developed like contacts with people who I just know can play well, and I know they know what I think, like what I'm sort of thinking. So it's more kind of knowing rough that they get what you're doing. That the singers
Sure.
are a higher risk because there's a number of different subjective things going on. If they're writing the top line and performing it and recording it, there's a load of like vectors for problems. One is like the recording quality, one is the performance quality, another is the melodic content, and then the other is the lyrical content. So there's all these places where you like could be a great recording, great performance, really great melody, but the lyrics are very weird. Or it could, or shit, or it could
Yeah.
be lyrics are fantastic. Love that. The melody is very repetitive, and I've done that. I've given those notes a bit to some people. Some people I've had to, like I say, I've kind of almost, you'd kind of know it was going wrong because I wouldn't bother kind of trying to salvage it. That with I hope she won't mind me saying this. With again mentioning Never Ending Dream, Megan McDuffie, she had one lyric in there at one point that I just subjectively didn't like, and I said that I gave a nice way of saying it in that I was like, I'm not sure it's quite fitting in with the rest of the vibe of the track. It's not sure it's quite working. Could we try something else here? Maybe something like this. And I gave a lyrical alternative suggestion. I said, it doesn't have to be that, but sort of in the ballpark of that. And she just switched this one bit out. And in fact, actually, Megan was the person actually, she gave me like an earlier like melody like take and said, what do you think of that? And my honest feeling was it felt quite repetitive, and it didn't feel like it was going anywhere melodically. So I said, that sort of in the right ballpark is a great start. There's something, I feel like it's maybe it's a little bit repetitive. Could we try and vary up here and here? So again, I'm not like saying, here's how I want you to solve the problem, but I'm just saying, here's the sort of puzzle now for you. I think this needs to evolve more. So he needs to do something different. So again, it's the skill of kind of, there's a skill in communicating with artists and musicians in doing it like a positive way that doesn't start. I think you've just got to decide, am I going to write the top line or am I going to ask someone else to write the top line? And so yeah. And yeah, sometimes it's just with guitarists it's easier because you could maybe just edit out parts. You could just start almost treating it like samples. So not everything they do may be gold.
Right, like cutting up a loop.
Yeah, cutting up a loop or something like that. It's vocals, you can't quite like, great, just give me loads of random vocals and I'll just comp them all together into like a fucking top line that you didn't sing. This doesn't work like that. Well, not for me.
Kind of like you're a director in a sense, you know, that filmic side kind of keeps coming back to your music, at least as far as what I'm getting out of it.
Yeah, I think, and you see that, and I've been on sets or I've been involved in plays and things where you have overly like micromanaging directors who are like, yeah, maybe not like so much like that. Maybe they're literally going up on the stage and going, maybe they just take the cup, but you know, they hold it like this, and they like kind of do like, and they're getting really like precise about the note rather than going, maybe there's a way you could show that you're more nervous about this person who's just walked into the party. Maybe there's something around you could use to sort of visually show that and help them come to get their own ideas. And also importantly, they may come up with something better than your shit mug idea. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of
yeah, totally. I understand
like
that.
people's strengths.
Exactly. Is that kind of like how you go about your live show too, or do you kind of just like set up your live show and then whoever's performing with you, you're like, here's what we're doing this time around?
I mean, I've not really done. In all honesty, I don't really consider myself like a live act. I've done a handful of gigs in my time. I don't know, maybe 10 or 12
as Sunglasses
shows.
Kid?
Yeah, Sunglasses Kid. I've had SJ Bravo, who's sung on a few tracks. I had him perform. I had him come and perform with me live. 2019, and again he sort of he did guitars over some songs that he hasn't sung over, and he sung on some songs, but generally I'm on my own, so I'm not really directing anyone, and I have a live kind of setup where I strip out like some of the main parts of the songs and I play them back in.
Cool.
Like the main, again with like the filmic thing, the storytelling thing, I guess I think a lot about structure, and I think a lot about like what emotions are going through people's minds during a show. Like, right, what's the first song? Okay, what was the energy of that track? Am I going to need to keep this energy up now? Where am I sitting within the lineup, the set? what's the kind of vibe of the whole night, who else is around me. And so I try to make it all filler and no killer. So I've got lots of songs that you just can't dance. You just really don't. They're not very dancey. So I just try and make everything dance energy and just, yeah. It's not. I don't know. I don't have like, yeah. I do. Yeah, it's mainly the structure, the playlist structure of it that I think about the most, and kind of the moments within that set. And try and make there be not a boring moment in it. I just think boring people is the cardinal sin as an artist. Is just don't be boring.
I couldn't agree more.
Right, exactly. Just put on a show.
Exactly. So before we let go out of here, I do want to sort of have you speak to your 2 records. Graduation and sophomore. There is sort of something. There's a filmic quality to it, as I think is kind of the sentiment, at least for what I've been getting out of getting to know you, is that even though you are a musician first and foremost, all types of art seems to affect and influence you. And certainly with like the little narratives, more so in the first record, Graduation, but also Sophomore, that first track kind of harkens back to the feel and the sort of emotional storytelling quality of the first record.
Right? Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I love that. I love that character, man. That's hilarious too. It feels so Ferris Bueller in a sense to me. And so I just want your take on those 2 records and your approach to them, and kind of like how you think they turned out, and just anything you could tell us about those albums, man.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I did. Ferris Bueller is very much a reference that you picked up on, and I think I just discovered this love of, like, I guess 80s, like I say, 80s movies, and synthwave is all clearly homaging 80s movie, the love of 80s movie soundtracks, but a lot of it is this more sort of Carpenter Brutty serious stuff. And part of and one of my kind of approaches to Sunglasses Kid was like, yeah, but there was a whole other genre of 80s movies out there that were fucking brilliant that didn't have any of this moody stuff. It was all electric pianos and cowbells and all this kind of fun, funky, silly stuff, which is what I want to kind of investigate. And I think with Graduation, it was just, I had very much had this idea of a kind of, not quite concept album, but I wanted it to feel like there was a cohesion across the album. And because I was collaborating with so many different people, and because I was almost sort of doing slightly different genres, different styles within that, each song slightly different. I guess I kind of approached it was like, okay, what can I do to kind of create a sort of form of cohesion across it? And also, I guess this was also, as everyone's social media games were becoming stronger in terms of marketing. So I did have a slight marketing hat on as well. That sounds really like kind of corporate, but part of me was like coming up with a sort of package that people can get their kind of heads around, or they can sort of imagine themselves in this world or something. And I even went as far as thinking, like, if someone was writing a review of this song, they could almost say, they could talk about graduating, or it lends itself to like ways of thinking and word use, like high school, and also everyone can relate to high school as well. So there was something about that world, and I love movies like St. Elmo's Fire is one of my favorite 80s movies, and Bueller and Breakfast Club and all those things. But so I'm trying to think what I can really add to this conversation. I'm trying to think what sort of, if you got anything you particularly like specifically wanted to know about.
Yeah, I have another question for you in regards to that. Having the vocals on the tracks and whatnot. Not that I because I also kind of got the same vibe, and hearing you speak about it, where it wasn't necessarily a concept record, and not that I ever thought that, but there is sort of like a theme to it, and I actually think it's nice. I think it separates you in the genre. But aside from all that, how much direction, I'll say, do you give to the narrative of the songs that you send these singers off to work on for the albums?
Yeah, so not much. I think a lot of it is that I'm giving people fairly close to finished songs. So I'm trying to sell a lot of the narrative in the song. The instrumental sort of gives you a lot of cues and clues as to what the vibe and what this is referencing, and hopefully if the singer kind of knows a bit about 80s culture, they're going to kind of get where you're going with it. And I'll usually, when I'm sending them over an audio file, I've given it like some working title. Although I was saying this to someone the other day, I was saying that sometimes is a kind of, it's a good and bad thing to give them a working title, because a lot of singers that I've sent over, you know, these demos, and I've given it a title like Can't Hide, right? Miranda Carey. I sent her over a file called Can't Hide. And I would have said something in an email to her, I would have said something along the lines of, hey, Miranda, wrote this track with you in mind. So I'll often start with sort of emphasizing that I've thought of you. This is kind of written a bit for you. And see what you think. Obviously, it's a sort of Paula, Janet J kind of vibe, whatever. I'll say something like that. Doesn't have to be called Can't Hide. Don't have to reference that. But yeah, see what you come up with. That's kind of the level of direction that I'm giving someone like Miranda Carey. And then she came back with lyrics that were like Can't Hide, going on about can't hiding, because she just latched on to these two words, the title that I'd given her. So sometimes I think back, I go, if I called this song something completely different as a working title, we would have had a whole completely different song. And I just and usually it's like some like lyric that starts just coming in my head whilst I'm writing. I'll just be like, can't hide, I can't hide, or something like that. And I'll just be like, oh, I call it Can't Hide for now. Don't know what it's actually going to be called at the end of the day. And so a lot of songs ended up with those, like with these titles, because I just used them as a working title. But something like Fixing Me With Love, Primo the Alien, I sent her, I was like, you must remember not to give it a working title that sounds like the title of a song, unless you actually want them to use that, because whatever you tell them, they may take that as an inspiration point. So I think I sent it over as like Funky Pop Beat 1. So something that I know she can't make lash onto. So I really gave her like a truly blank slate.
Yeah.
And interestingly, like Sophomore, completely no plan. Everybody decided to write about relationships, and everyone had either got the word love or heart in every other song. So I was saying, like, how everyone's got, like, one's Fixing Me Love, one's called like Cold Hearted, one's called Listen to Your Heart, one's called Stranger Love. There was all these. Stranger Love was another one where when I sent it to Ollie, I gave it the title Strange Love. And I was just thinking of strange. I literally set out. It was like a sort of afternoon experiment. I was bored. I was like, I'm just going to write some just bog standard synthwave shit, and I'll call it Stranger Things or Stranger Love or something like that. That's literally why I said Stranger. Sent it over to Ollie, and when he reached out to me saying, "Oh, I like that." I said, "Well, obviously I've called it Stranger Love, but obviously don't like call it Stranger Love, because you know everyone will say us we're ripping off Stranger Things, and it's, you know, we can't call it that." And he's like, yeah. And then he comes back and he's called it Strange Love. And
that's
so
awesome.
It's again, it's kind of so I guess I am sort of directing it, and I'm giving people, but again, that's why I guess it's that world building that you might be doing as a brand, or you're doing as a brand as well. So on your social media presence, you're sort of saying, this is who I am. This is the world I inhabit. This is who this artist is. And so because you're not only are you talking to fans, but you're talking to other musicians who might be fellow collaborators. And so if somebody who's the next potential singer, let's say, who I'm talking to a couple of people right now who found me through Instagram, who are interested in singing, you know, working on songs. If they've spent more than 5 minutes on my Instagram, they've already kind of got the world and understood the headspace that I'm in. So it's acting like this like live mood board, which is always what I said to me and Ollie would always say, was it's like I'm using Instagram like this sort of mood board to share ideas and go, right, here's the visual references. Get your head into this sort of world, into this sort of space, because this is where we're going if you're working with me. And so I've always tried to use social media both not only as a marketing tool, but almost as a kind of like a world building tool, like an extension of the world. Yeah.
Right. That's interesting. I was going to ask you about when, you know, you decide on like the theme of an album, because it seems like listening to the albums, it seems like there's all like they all fall under, you know, the theme of the first track with the skit and everything. But then hearing you talk about how you write music, it's like it just comes to you almost randomly and just when inspiration strikes and stuff. So like, when does it get from just these songs that you're making with all these other artists to, okay, here's the album that has this theme and this, you know, direction?
I mean, I'd love to say it's as controlled as that. I mean, it's more about kind of generating lots of ideas and then throwing things out and select. It's sort of like the editing process and then going, and then the more songs you've got, or you're then, maybe you're sort of zooming out, looking at a collection of tracks, going, okay, we've got all these tracks here. Some are in a half finished state. Some are definitely good. Like, oh yeah, that definitely, that's a definite keep. Some you're like, I don't know if that's got potential or not. Then you're zooming out and looking at them all in a kind of big context of going, well, now I was saying this to someone the other day, was like, well, now I've upped the ante on this one. Now this sounds really good. That track I thought was good needs to go because it just doesn't, it doesn't stand up to this one. So there's a quality control thing as much as anything else. So it's just about like, I think that's why I'm judging it mainly on. It's not, does it fit into like a theme? It's more, is it a good song or not? And I guess there are sometimes there's kind of, I'm going, that doesn't really sound like me. That sounds like I've gone too far away from the ideas and the thing that people have fallen in love with. Like, and I'm not, and I think there's something to be said for like changing up your style as an artist, and but there's doing it deliberately and there's doing it accidentally. If that makes sense. True. So I try to kind of like just make sure, like I just want to go, does it feel coherent? And also once you've got your like 10, 11 tracks, are they all sound the same? Are they're different energies? Like, okay, if I've got this amazing big track at the start that's really high energy, can I keep it up again like that? Like I was saying about that, the opening, the intro of the premise, the story. If it's like an album, it's like, okay, you've got one good song at the start, but are you setting yourself up for a fall? Now you've got the expectation. What's the next one going to be? Is it just downhill from here on in because you've only got one good song? So I try to kind of, I'm always again like trying to think of the overall kind of picture, right, and what people are kind of going through. At the same time, though, no one's listening to whole albums anymore, are they? They're just consuming.
No, I feel that.
Trying to, but
yeah, I think you're lucky enough to be in a genre where people actually still do. But so before because we don't want to eat up too much more of your time, although this was really awesome and really enlightening. Thank you for sharing so much.
For sure.
I just wanted to let you know real quick about how Andrew and I discovered you. We were, I think it was about 2018, so roughly 3 years ago now. Andrew and I were just hanging out, probably from working on a song, taking a Taco Bell lunch break or something like that. And I think I was driving, so I was like, Andrew, pull something up.
You were driving me home.
Oh, I was driving Andrew home, yeah. And I told him to pull something up I wanted to show him. He pulled up the wrong thing. Spotify fed us your song Night Swim, and he was like, hey, man, this isn't the song. And he's like, do you want me to keep this on? I was like, yeah, keep this on. This is awesome. But
honestly,
what were you trying to listen to, though?
I don't know, but he tries to show me so many synthwave songs, and like 80% of the time I'm like, bro, this sounds just like the last one you showed me, like whatever. And then like I accidentally put on Night Swim, and I'm like, I mean, we could definitely keep this one on.
We were both like, keep this on. I was like, who is this? And
yeah,
it's funny because that was kind of an interesting introduction to your sound, because it's just an instrumental track, which you don't have too many of.
Right, and it was such a cool, like, the artwork and everything was just like, damn, this is all just so together, and like, he's got it figured out.
Yeah, well, do you know why that song exists? Is because I was a guy reached out to me who was like an indie game developer, saying, hey, I'm making a game called Summer Camp that's inspired by Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
We want like an in-house kind of radio thing, like the GTA radio. We want like kind of retro music. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. Sounds fun. Then he disappears and doesn't talk to me for ages. And I'm like, well, that's just, one of the crazy people who offers me something on the internet and then they disappear. He comes back to me going, hey, sorry, I've been out of action. The reason is because we've had a load of development, and Warner Brothers have been interested in turning our little indie game into an official Friday the 13th game. So that song Night Swim was that he actually commissioned me to write that for a trailer for the Friday the 13th online multiplayer game that exists.
Oh, really?
So,
that game?
Yeah.
That's
so it was an
awesome.
actual like, I think it was one of those like download, like it was like a download thing. It was like advertising swimwear. If you go on YouTube and Google like Friday the 13th, I think it's called Spring Break DLC. It was like doing all these like swimming costumes and stuff. And so the visuals are like, so I scored it to actual like picture. The visuals are like, it starts off with like a woman swimming in Crystal Lake in like a bikini, and then everyone gets slowly murdered. I had to write that fucking song so fucking fast. And Myrone, I convinced the guys. I was like, this needs an electric guitar. I know a guy who did something for me on graduation. He's going to cost this. Can we do it? Yeah. Myrone manages to. He says he gets around to kind of doing the guitar. Says, yeah, I'm going to have them done by the end of the week. And the game developers, the game guys are like, we've just had this amazing news. We can have this game trailer screened at NAMM, I think it was called, some massive gaming festival. But we need this song like now. And then almost as soon as I get that email, I get an email from Myrone going, "Hey bro, sorry it took a while. Here's the guitar stems." And I literally just took them out of the WinZip file and dropped them into Cubase, and then just and was almost hitting export without even checking what he'd done. And I quickly was like editing it. I just cut it together super quick, did the most basic mix, and then zipped it over. And I'd already sent them, because it was so to the wire. They said, "Don't worry about the guitars." So I sent them an instrumental version and then a version with Myrone's guitars on it. And I was like, I don't even know which version is going to end up being screened at this massive like thing. Right. And they did get they screened the Myrone version. And then I went back and like tidied it up and did it into an extended track. And we did a deal with them where we could still kind of be allowed to like stream it. We just couldn't call it Friday the 13th. We weren't legally allowed to say it was a song for the game or anything like that. Wow. So that it became called it's called Night Swim because of this this kind of referencing the wow. Friday the 13th movie, and then that's the amazing. Artwork was just referencing it. But
that's a great story. Wow.
What I was going to say about the final thing? Sorry, I know I'm not.
No, you take all your time, man.
But,
we're worried about keeping you, so go ahead.
Well, no worries. When you said about sometimes you try an idea and then you go, "Oh no, that's not working." You go to another idea and you go, "Actually, no, the first idea was good." I literally the first thing I did when I pulled up the video, I started a click track and sort of said, "Okay, it's gonna be like a like that," and I just literally opened an electric piano, went dun 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 like that, and I went, "Oh, that's cool." And then I thought, this is too easy. I haven't just hit the idea in literally the first three chords I've played down. That can't be it. So I played around with loads of shit, and then came back and just goes, "No, I was the first thing I did. The very first thing I instinctively did is the thing to do. Keep going with that. That's the thing. Don't waste any more time. You've got 4 days to do this." And then I was like, Myrone will then bring it to another level. He'll add something over it and make it sound even more impressive, and that'll do. And that's why I love writing to briefs and almost sometimes to deadlines as well, because it like forces you. You can go. You've got all these options, but you go, I cannot explore these. This is not the luxury of time, and you laser in and sometimes that's when you're most productive.
Right.
Well, I mean, I
think it worked out because according to Spotify, it's your second most popular song under Strange Love. So
yeah,
seems like it worked out pretty well.
I think I do get a lot of people who know about it because of Friday the 13th, and I do kind of sometimes go, "Oh, maybe I should be doing more instrumental stuff," and I kind of was flirting recently with the idea of maybe there's an EP or an album between another album that I just do instrumentals, because it's a shitload of work. It's a lot of work collaborating with people. You're adding in so many variables for things to go wrong and losing so much control, and it's hard. But then I guess that's what people like about it as well. You're getting kind of lots of different artists, it's almost like a compilation album or something. There's
Yeah.
something in there for everyone. Sounds like I'm saying.
No,
See,
very
sometimes
true, man.
people will often say that in the comment. There's just something in there for everyone. If you don't like this one, you'll like that one, or
Well,
which makes it sound like I'm just trying to placate the mob.
well, I mean, I would think at least listening to the most recent album that there is something on there for everybody. At least everybody who enjoys the '80s.
True.
Yeah.
At the very least, and I think
I mean,
everyone's going to enjoy this episode.
Well, I hope so. I mean, the one thing about Strangelove, again, the other thing I was going to say about the approach to anything is that because, like I said, because I'm aware that what I do isn't entirely strictly synthwave. With Strangelove, it's definitely the most synthwavy song on the album. It's the one that feels and sounds like stuff you recognize in the synthwave genre. And there is this cynical part of me does often go, you need to have at least one synthwavy track in there, because this is the sort of your audience is, this is how you've got to where you are. And also, it's the one, whatever you make, the most synthwavy track is the one that's most likely to get put into playlists, like synthwave playlists, to be cynical. So, if like I knew, I was like, well, Strangelove is the one that's going to get put into any synthwave playlists. And then that acts as a bit of a gateway drug to get someone over to my album. And then someone goes, oh, there's going to be loads of Strangelove. No, it's all Janet Jackson, Paula Abdul, 80s funk shit. And you're like, what? It's a bit like the Night Swim track, where you must have been like, oh, the rest of his album isn't anything, any of his music isn't anything like this.
Totally.
Well, it's just like
in the best way. It was the best type of surprise.
Yeah, it's just like in movies when actors, they say they do one for them and then one for me, where it's like one for them is like a movie like The Smurfs, and then one for you is that indie film that you really wanted to make. So you give them the Strangelove so you can put out the skits and the really 80s pop workout songs.
It's like Scorsese. I'll give you Cape Fear and The Color of Money if I can also give you Last Temptation of Christ.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, totally, man. No, this was an absolute blast to you. Thank you again for carving out some time to chat with us. Andrew has one final question for you, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course.
We ask every guest. So.
Yeah.
Yes. Before we let all of our guests go, we like to ask them if you had to describe yourself as an artist, a creative musician, producer, whatever you want to put under your umbrella, if you could describe that with one word, and then you can elaborate afterwards on why that word, but pick one word to describe yourself. We would love to know.
One word? Fuck. Do other artists take a long time to think of that? Do they? How many people have just gone and given you one straight away?
Lately, a lot of them have been firing at the hip
right away. But I feel like lately they've been firing it out at the hip. But when we started this, everyone always took a little time, and we can edit out a pause, if we have to.
I guess. Positive.
You don't seem very positive about it.
I don't feel very sure about it. And I'm like, if it's like a word that sums up if it's like a word that sums up the vibe, I would say something like candy or pop or
fun
or teen or something, or fun or something. But then if it's like an atmosphere, if it's like kind of the vibe, then I guess it's like positive. That's kind of the thing that I guess, trying to keep things fun. Fun. That's just the most beige word. Fun. I'm just fun.
Listen, we've got determined. We've got perseverance. I think someone said musician.
I mean, the whole thing is like we're putting you on the spot.
We had,
so
I think the last episode was 2 people, and they said songwriter and performer.
I guess, I think maybe it is fun, because I think that it was definitely something, again, not to sound critical of the synthwave world, which is something I started before we went online, of saying the one thing I don't want to get into is my opinion of other artists. But the one thing I do find a little bit with this, with the synthwave genre, is it seems very, it's really kind of in the last sort of 3-4 years distilled into exploring conceptually this sort of dystopian 80s cyberpunky narrative a lot, and it's all got quite doomy and gloomy. And for me, the thing I always loved about the 80s as a kind of pop culture thing, and movies and fashion and everything, was just how fun and like cool and positive it all felt. And so I kind of, and like I said, it was almost born out of that kind of depressing state that I got myself into with the film score stuff, of moody, and music must be this horrible, deep, dark thing that I'm struggling and fighting for, and it needs to be this intense experience, and kind of going, or it could just be something fun, and maybe we need to, I just, part of me was kind of reacting to feeling like, where'd all the good pop songs go? Where'd all like the fun pop songs go? There was a fun pop banger came out every week in the 90s and the 80s. And then the 2000s, it all sort of stopped. And maybe that's me tuning out a bit of pop culture, but I'm like, where's Barbie Girl? Where's the Barbie Girl song? Like a really well-written, like fun pop song. And so I think that was it. I just thought, I was like, there's entirely enough moody music out there. I'm going to do something a bit different.
It's funny because I feel like that happened not just in synthwave, like what you're describing right now. It's like the 80s and 90s was all like the pop, the upbeat, dancing around pop, and then you got to the 2000s and it was all like the singer-songwriters like Michelle Branch and Vanessa Carlton singing about like breakups and like getting kind of moody. It wasn't really, like slow and like really sad. They still had some upbeat stuff, but it was definitely a tone shift to just kind of like I'm sitting down with my acoustic guitar and really putting it out there.
And there's totally a place for it. And
I love that.
I'm a consumer of like moody music, totally. But I think, I don't know, there was something liberating. Like when I started doing it, it was like, because I wasn't taking it seriously, because I wasn't beholden to anyone it's like, my attitude was literally, I've let go of the idea that I'm going to be famous. I've let go of trying to be a success. I'm not trying to do anything. This is a fucking hobby. So now everyone can leave me alone, and I don't need to prove anything to anyone, and I can do something entirely for me. And that was where I started it. And then as people started listening and enjoying what I was doing, I did start to think about the listener a bit more and what they were wanting out of it. But no, any song I do, anything I sit down and write, I always have a moment where I'm going, I need to do something to make this a bit kind of more fun. And there'll be a moment where I'm like, could I get away with an orchestral hit? I remember the moment where I was like, can I get away with that? And I would try and have that. I try and keep that mindset every time I write a song. I want there to be a moment where I go, can I get away with it moment? Where like you listen to a song and go, oh my god, he got away with it. And then fixing
where's the line?
Yeah, well, like Fixing Me with Love with Primo. It's a really small moment, but on the second verse, there's like a woof. It's like a woofing percussion. It goes whoop, 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 which is like the cheesiest shit sound. And I accidentally hit it. I was auditioning through a load of percussion, just trying to think of. I was like, it needs something. I went whoop, whoop. I was like, oh my god, that's such a stupid sound. Could I get away with that? Like what? Like and it's like so minimal. It's minimal, but it's like. And I always think, I bet that's a moment people would notice and like kind of enjoy, because he's like, oh my god, he dared to do that whoop, whoop thing. So I try and always have like a little thing like that in every track that I do.
Nice.
Oh yeah, man, that's awesome, dude. We did it, man. Sunglasses Kid. Yeah. We did it. That was great, dude. Appreciate it. A lot of cool tidbits, a lot of insight into you and your process. And I'm really looking forward for people hearing this. I hope they enjoyed as much as I did. Before we let you go here, where can the people find you? Where can they support your music? Where can they keep up to date with everything Sunglasses Kid?
And what's coming up next?
Well, what's coming up next? At the moment, I'm kind of like I said, I'm doing a few kind of commercial bits and pieces away from the Sunglasses Kid name, but I'm at the moment I'm going regathering my thoughts about what the next album is going to be, what the next track's going to be. We've just had a reissue of Graduation on vinyl, and for the first time ever, you can buy it on tape and CD. And Sophomores are also out at the moment on vinyl, tape, and CD. The easiest way to get that, the only way to get that, I think, is on my Bandcamp. The quickest way to find that is just Google Sunglasses Kid Bandcamp. And I'm on all social media channels, although I'm most active on Instagram under the name Sunglasses Kid Music. So yeah, that's it really. There's no major at the moment. There's no major kind of imminent music coming out. I think I'm at this moment where I'm sort of reevaluating the sound and sort of thinking, where can I go next? Where do I want to take it next? Because I don't want to just put out another bunch of music that sounds exactly like what I've done. So I want to kind of spend a bit of time doing some research and development into where the sound is going to go next. Yeah.
Oh yeah, man.
Well,
Guys,
in the
go follow him
meantime, go follow him. Go listen to his newest album. It'll get you moving around for sure.
Totally. Dude, we're gonna throw you to the lobby. If you got a jet, if you gotta work on something, no stress.
Cool.
If you want to stick around, that's cool too. But thanks again so much for your time, man. We had an absolute blast chatting with you.
We'd love to have you.
Cheers, guys. I would love to come back. Thanks very much for having me.
No
Hell
problem.
yeah, dude. That was awesome, Andrew.
Yes, I would have to agree, Chris.
I had a really good time with that. Thanks again to Edward for coming on the show, telling us all about Sunglasses Kid. I mean, we knew the music, now we know the person and the face behind it.
Yeah, it was so cool because like I feel like everything that he puts out, it's so not like mysterious, but it's like it's got a vibe, and you never see his face with the music and stuff. So it's like, or almost surreal to like see him and hear his normal voice.
You could say we took the sunglasses off the kid and kind of got to know the man wearing the glasses.
That's true. I bet not a lot of people get to do that.
And if you guys want to get to know us a little better, there's got to be a place we could do that, right, Andrew? Do we have something for them if they wanted more talking with Andrew and Chris? Do you know of anything?
I guess I could think of a couple places. Have you heard of the internet, Chris?
Is that the thing everyone's fighting over these days?
Among other things, yeah. But
yeah,
we're all over the internet, dude. We're on all the social media sites that I know that all of you are on, because let's face it, it's 2021. At least 90% of you are on there. We're on there too. Here are our personals. Follow those. That's always fun. But even more important, I think, follow the show, please, at Talkin Podcast on all the social medias. Talk to us, follow us, you know. Let us know what you want to hear, who you want us to talk to, what you want us to talk about. We have a lot of ideas, but we want to hear from you guys too, so do that. Chris, but when they're not talking to us, if they want content, where do they find our content? I can't remember.
Yeah, don't worry, I got that covered, man. You can find us on YouTube. Just type in Talkin Podcast, TALKIN. Apostrophe, no G. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at those places. Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Google Play, Breaker, Radio Public. The list goes on. Every single podcasting hosting platform we are on. So that's a fact, aside from SoundCloud, because they're not really a podcasting hosting platform. So if there was any discrepancy, glad I could clear that up for you. We have interviews with Lau of Aztec Records, who also is the home of Sunglasses Kid, as well as other synthwave artists like Arcade Knights. We have Wolf Club, which actually just came out last week. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. We've talked with Surge, who's a Swedish synthwave artist, as well as a ton more of your favorite synthwave artists and other musicians coming down the pipeline.
That's right.
And Andrew and I have a couple episodes with Just Us planned. I know we did a lot of that in the beginning of the year, but then, hey, the stars aligned and I was able to book a ton of interviews. But we're going to be talking about Daft Punk. We're going to be talking about the Foo Fighters and a bunch of other stuff. Stick with us, guys. We got a whole year planned for you, and really excited to get to it.
And besides all that, while you're following our show and all that other stuff, you might as well check out Chris's other show on our network called Talkin TV that he does with Dom, who's not as cool as me, but he's still pretty cool. But they talk about movies and TV, and I feel like if you like Sunglasses Kids type of music, you're going to like what they talk about over at Talkin TV.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate that. Again, Dom never does that for you, so I think you're just too nice of a guy, but I can't fault you for that either. So with that being said, guys, Sorry, what were you saying?
I was gonna say, you know, it's my
Insert
network
bit.
too, so.
True. Very true.
So I want all the shows to do well.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And I'm glad that ours is doing well. I'm glad that you guys, the listener, are here with us week in and week out. It really does mean a lot. It means the world to us. Once again, this was another episode of Talkin' with Andrew and Chris. And Andrew, do you have a final message for the people here today?
Don't swim in Crystal Lake, and also stay sweet.